I woke up gasping, my heart hammering against my ribs like it wanted to escape. The ceiling above me was wrong. Not the water-stained tiles of the homeless shelter where I'd spent my last night, but the smooth white plaster of my old bedroom. Our old bedroom. I turned my head, and there he was. Daniel, my husband. Asleep beside me, his face peaceful and younger than I'd seen it in years. No, not younger than I'd seen it in years. Younger than I'd seen it in decades. My hands flew to my face. Smooth skin, no wrinkles. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand, an iPhone 6, not the cracked burner I'd been using, and stared at the date. September 14th, 2015. 10 years. I'd gone back 10 years. The last thing I remembered was the bridge, the cold water of the harbor below, the certainty that I had nothing left. Emma had taken everything, my work, my reputation, my savings, my future. The non-compete agreement I'd signed meant I couldn't work in fashion consulting anywhere in the South. United States for 5 years, I was 45 years old, blacklisted in my industry, and broke. She'd made sure of that. My sister-in-law, my best friend, the woman I'd helped build an empire. I sat up slowly, trying to control my breathing. Daniel stirred but didn't wake. I slipped out of bed and went to the bathroom, turning on the light and really looking at myself. 35-year-old face, no gray in my dark hair, eyes that hadn't yet learned what betrayal looked like. This was real. Somehow, impossibly, I was back. And I remembered everything. I spent the morning in a daze, going through the motions of a life I'd already lived. Daniel left for work. He was a senior architect at Morrison & Fletcher, making good money, thinking his career was on track. He had no idea that in 2 years, his firm would be acquired and he'd be laid off. He had no idea that his sister was a viper. Emma called at 10 a.m., just like she had the first time. Maya, oh my God, you have to come. Over. I have the most amazing idea. My hand tightened on the phone. I remembered this conversation. This was the day Emma had pitched me her business idea. The day I'd agreed to help her. The day I'd sealed my fate. What kind of idea? I kept my voice light, friendly, the way I'd been the first time when I'd loved her like a sister. Fashion consulting, but like elevated, luxury brand strategy. You know how you're always talking about how brands don't understand their heritage stories? We could do that. We could be the best. She'd said we. In my first life, I'd been so excited. I'd quit my job at the consulting firm where I was a senior analyst. I'd poured my savings into our startup. I'd developed our entire methodology, our client approach, our signature frameworks. I'd worked 18-hour days for 3 years, building something beautiful. And then, when we were finally successful, when Fortune 500 brands were calling us, when we were about to close a Series A funding round, that's when Emma had struck. She'd gone to our investors privately, told them I was unstable, that I was the ideas person, but she was the one who actually ran the business. Showed them doctored emails that made it look like I was planning to leave and start a competitor. The investors had panicked. They'd demanded my removal as a condition of funding. Emma had come to me with tears in her eyes. Maya, I fought for you. I really did. But they won't invest if you stay on. And we need this money, or we'll lose everything. Everyone we've hired, all our clients. I need you to step down as co-founder. You'll still get a small equity stake, I promise. And I'll hire you as a consultant. I'd believed her. I'd signed the paperwork. Then came the consultant agreement. Buried in the 60 pages of legal jargon was a non-compete clause. 5 years. Anywhere in the United States. Any business related to fashion, luxury goods, brand consulting, or retail strategy by the time I understood what I'd signed, it was too late. Emma had pushed me out entirely within 6 months, kept my equity stake so small it was worthless. And when I tried to find other work, the non-compete had followed me everywhere. She'd made sure every potential employer knew about it, made sure they knew I'd be a legal liability. I'd spent 5 years watching her build an empire with my ideas, my frameworks, my strategies. She was on magazine covers. She keynoted conferences. She became a thought leader in luxury brand consulting. And I became nothing. Maya, you still there? I realized I'd been silent too long. Sorry, yes, tell me more. Come over for lunch. I'll make that quinoa salad you love. We can brainstorm. The quinoa salad I loved. She'd even remember details like that, use them to make me trust her. I actually can't today, I said. I have a meeting. Oh. She sounded surprised. In the first timeline, I'd dropped everything for her. Okay, well, tomorrow? I'll check my calendar and text you. I hung up before she could push further. My hands were shaking. I wanted to scream at her to tell her I knew what she was going to do, but that wouldn't help. Revenge wasn't about confrontation. It was about winning, and I was going to win. I spent the next 3 days researching. In 2015, I still had my job at Pemberton Consulting. I was good at it. Senior analyst, respected by clients, on track for promotion to principal. In my first life, I'd thrown it all away to help Emma. Not this time. I also researched Canada, specifically Canadian business law and non-compete agreements. What I found made me smile for the first time since waking up in the past. Canada, unlike most of the United States, treated non-compete agreements with extreme skepticism. Courts there routinely struck them down as unreasonable restraints of trade. Even if someone signed one, it was rarely enforceable unless it was extremely narrow in scope and time. More importantly, a non-compete signed in the United States for a U.S. company had virtually no weight in Canadian courts, especially for someone who became a Canadian resident or citizen. I opened my laptop and started making notes. Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, all major cities with thriving fashion industries, all places where I could build what I knew how to build. But I was getting ahead of myself. First, I needed to let Emma make her move. I needed to let her think she was winning. Because the best revenge is letting someone destroy themselves with their own greed. I waited a week before agreeing to meet Emma. When I finally showed up at her apartment, she hugged me like we hadn't seen each other in months, instead of just days. I was starting to think you were avoiding me, she said with a laugh. Just busy with work, I said, sitting down at her kitchen island. So tell me about this idea. She launched into it with infectious enthusiasm. In my first life, I'd been swept up in it. This time, I listened with cool analysis. She wanted to create a consultancy that helped luxury brands tell their story. But her actual vision was vague, full of buzzwords without substance. I love it, I said when she finished. But Emma, I have to be honest, I don't think I can quit my job to do this. Her face fell. What? But Maya, you're the only person who can do this with me. You understand brands in a way nobody else does. I know, but I'm finally getting somewhere at Pemberton. I'm up for principal next year. This could be so much bigger than principal at some consulting firm, she pressed. We could build something that's ours. Ours. That word again. What if I helped you part-time? I suggested. Nights and weekends at first. If it takes off, then maybe I'd consider jumping in full-time. She didn't like that. I could see it in her eyes. She needed me all in, needed me invested and vulnerable. I don't know if that would work, she said, slowly. I need someone committed, a real partner. I am committed, I said. But I'm also practical. Starting a business is risky. We should both keep our income streams stable while we build this, don't you think? She couldn't argue with that logic, not without revealing that she needed me desperate and dependent. Okay, she finally said, part-time to start, but I'm going to hold you to moving to full-time once we prove the concept. Deal. We shook hands. I smiled at her, and I began to plan. Over the next 6 months, I helped Emma exactly enough to make her dependent on me, but not enough to trap myself. I kept my job at Pemberton. I developed the initial frameworks for brand heritage consulting, the same frameworks I'd created the first time because they were genuinely good, but I didn't document them in any way that tied them to me or to Emma's nascent company. I kept everything in my personal notes, my personal computer. Nothing went into Emma's files or emails. that couldn't be easily denied as just brainstorming. Meanwhile, I started building something else, a network in Canada. I joined Canadian professional organizations online. I started attending virtual conferences for Canadian marketing professionals. I contributed to Canadian industry publications under a pseudonym. I slowly, carefully built a reputation in a market that Emma didn't even know existed. I also started transferring money. Small amounts at first, nothing that Daniel would notice. I opened a Canadian bank account. I consulted with an immigration attorney about the process for getting Canadian permanent residency. And I watched Emma. She was pitching investors using the frameworks I'd helped her develop. She was networking, building buzz. She'd quit her job, she'd been working in marketing at a cosmetics company, and was going all in on her startup dream. In my first life, this was when I'd felt the pressure to quit my job too, to match her commitment, to prove I was a real partner. This time, I just nodded sympathetically when she complained about stress and kept showing up for my strategy meetings at Pemberton. "You're really not going to quit?" she asked me one night in March 2016. We were in her apartment reviewing a pitch deck for potential investors. "Not yet," I said. "Emma, you're doing great. You don't need me full-time yet." "But I do," yes, she insisted. "Maya, these investors want to see a full team. They want to see that we're serious. Tell them I'm your strategic advisor, that I consult for you." "That's impressive too, that you have a senior consultant from Pemberton helping you." She frowned. She didn't like it, but she couldn't argue. What she didn't know was that I was watching her pitch process very carefully. I was seeing which investors she was targeting, what her valuation expectations were, what terms she was negotiating, and I was learning from her mistakes. The first major difference from my original timeline came in June 2016. In my first life, Emma had landed a meeting with Lux Capital, a prestigious VC firm that specialized in fashion and luxury retail. That meeting had eventually led to our Series A funding, the funding that had required my removal. This time, when she told me about the Lux Capital meeting, I said something different. "Emma, I need to tell you something about Lux." She looked up from her laptop. "What?" "I heard through the grapevine at Pemberton. We did some work for one of their portfolio companies, that they're really difficult to work with. Very controlling. They'd push out founders." This was true. I'd learned it the hard way. "Really?" She looked worried. "Yeah, I'd just be careful. Maybe talk to some other founders they've funded. Do your due diligence." She nodded slowly. "That's good advice." In my first timeline, she'd gone into that meeting blind and desperate. She'd accepted their terms without question. This time, she did her homework. She talked to other founders. She learned about Lux's reputation. And she took the meeting anyway because she was greedy and ambitious and thought she could handle them. But she went in more cautious, more guarded. And when they started asking about me, about the strategic consultant on her team, she got defensive. "Maya Patel is one of the best brand strategists in the industry," she told them. "She's consulting for me while maintaining her position at Pemberton. It's actually ideal. We get her expertise without the overhead of a full-time salary." The Lux partners had looked at each other. In my first timeline, they'd seen me as a threat to Emma's leadership. This time, with me positioned as just a part-time consultant, I was less of a concern. They offered Emma a term sheet, smaller than in my first timeline, $2 million instead of $5 million, but with better terms for her. She kept more equity. She kept more control. She was thrilled. I congratulated her and privately smiled because I knew what was coming next. The investors would want to formalize the business. They'd want to see proper corporate structure. They'd want employment agreements. And that's when she'd strike. It happened in August 2016. Emma called me on a Saturday morning. "Maya, can you come over? We need to talk about something important." Her voice had an edge I recognized. This was it. I drove to her apartment with my heart rate perfectly calm. I'd been preparing for this. When I got there, she had papers spread across her dining table. Daniel was there too, which surprised me. In my first timeline, he'd been kept out of the business stuff. "Hey, Daniel," I said carefully. "What's going on?" "Emma asked me to be here," he said. He looked uncomfortable. "As family." Oh, this was new. Emma smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. So the investors want to formalize everything. They're putting in the money, but they need proper corporate structure, employment agreements, equity distributions, all of that. Makes sense, I said, sitting down. The thing is, Maya, you've been amazing helping me part-time. But for the equity split to make sense to the investors, they need to see that you're actually committed, that you're going to quit Pemberton and come on full-time. There it was. I don't know if I'm ready to do that, I said slowly. But you have to see it from their perspective, Daniel interjected. His sister had clearly coached him. Emma's putting everything on the line. She needs a real partner, not someone who's hedging their bets. I looked at my husband. In my first timeline, he'd supported Emma too, but more reluctantly. She'd clearly been working on him. What are you proposing? I asked Emma. She pushed papers toward me. I've had lawyers draw up an agreement. You'd come on as chief strategy officer. You'd get 15% equity, fully vested over 4 years, salary of $120K to start. In my first timeline, she'd offered me 25% equity and convinced me to be a co-founder. This was worse. She was already lowballing me. I picked up the papers and started reading. It was all there. The employment agreement, the equity grant, and buried on page 47, the non-compete clause. 5 years. Anywhere in the United States, any business related to fashion, luxury, brand consulting, or retail strategy. The exact same trap as before. This is a pretty restrictive non-compete, I said mildly. It's standard, Emma said quickly. The investors require it. They don't want either of us running off to start a competitor. Do you have the same clause? She hesitated. Mine is a little different. Since I'm the CEO and majority shareholder, they structured it differently. I'd bet anything her non-compete was much narrower, maybe even non-existent. Can I think about it? I asked. Maya, Emma's voice sharpened. The investors need an answer by Monday. If you're not in, I need to know now so I can find someone else. Someone else? I repeated. A chief strategy officer. Someone who's actually committed to this. Daniel put his hand on mine. Maya, this is a huge opportunity for both of you, for our family. I looked at my husband. He had no idea he was helping his sister destroy me. In my first timeline, by the time he'd realized what Emma had done, it was too late. He'd been horrified, but not enough to cut her off, not enough to choose me over his family. We'd divorced 3 years after she pushed me out. He'd kept the house, I'd kept nothing. Okay, I said quietly. Emma's face lit up. Really? But I need to have my own lawyer review this first. It's a big decision, you understand. Her smile froze. Of course. But Maya, we really are on a tight timeline. I'll have an answer by Monday, I promised. I took the papers and left. I didn't go to a lawyer. I already knew what the papers said. Instead, I went home and made a phone call to Toronto. Patel Strategic Consulting, answered a warm voice. This is Jennifer Chen speaking. Jennifer was a business attorney I'd connected with through my Canadian networking. She had no idea who I really was yet, but she was about to find out. Hi, Jennifer, this is Maya Patel. We've emailed a few times about Canadian business law. Yes, Maya, how are you? I'm good. Listen, I'm ready to move forward with what we discussed. I want to set up a Canadian corporation and begin the process for permanent residency. Wonderful. When are you thinking of making the move? Sooner than expected. Within the next 3 months, if possible. We talked for an hour. Jennifer explained the process for incorporating in Ontario, for applying for permanent residency through the Startup Visa program. Canada wanted entrepreneurs. They wanted people who would create jobs and bring expertise. I had both. By the time I hung up, I had a plan. I'd incorporate my consulting firm in Canada. I'd begin building a client base there. Remotely at first, I'd apply for permanent residency. And when the time was right, I'd move. But first, I had to deal with Emma. On Monday morning, I called her. I can't do it, I said. I'm sorry, Emma, but I can't quit Pemberton. The non-compete is too risky. Silence on the other end. You're joking, she finally said. I'm not. I read through everything carefully. If things don't work out, I'd be locked out of my entire industry for 5 years. I can't take that risk. Things will work out, she snapped. We have investor backing. We have clients lined up. This is going to be huge. Maybe, but I need to be practical. Practical. Her voice was ice. Maya, I've spent 6 months building this with you. You developed half our methodology. You've been telling investors you're part of the team. As a consultant, which I'm happy to continue doing. That's not good enough anymore. The investors want to see a committed team. If you're not all in, you're out. Then I guess I'm out. Another long silence. Fine, she said finally. But Maya, you know you can't use any of the frameworks we developed together. That's my intellectual property. I almost laughed. She was already trying to claim ownership of my work. The frameworks we brainstormed together? I said carefully. Emma, those were collaborative discussions. There's no IP there. We'll see what my lawyers say about that. She hung up. I sat back in my chair, my heart pounding. It had worked. She'd cut me loose before I'd signed anything, before I'd trapped myself. Now I just had to wait for her to succeed. Because she would. She had good investors, decent connections, and enough of my initial ideas to build something. And once she did, once she proved the market, once she showed that luxury brand heritage consulting was a viable, profitable business model, that's when I'd launch in Canada, with no non-compete to stop me, with all the lessons I'd learned from her mistakes, with a decade of future knowledge about what worked and what didn't. Emma blocked me on everything: social media, messaging, email. Daniel was caught in the middle, trying to maintain peace between his wife and his sister. She says you backed out at the last minute, he told me one night. She says you betrayed her. I didn't sign her contract, I said. That's not betrayal, that's self-preservation. She's really hurt, Maya. I looked at my husband. He'd take her side eventually. I knew that now. When I left for Canada, he wouldn't come with me. He'd choose his family over me. I should have been sad about that, but mostly I felt numb. Our marriage had died in my first timeline. I was just watching it die again, faster this time. I'm sure she'll be fine, I said. She has her investors. She'll find another strategist. She did. Emma hired someone named Marcus Chen, a mid-level consultant from a competing firm. He was good, but not great. More importantly, he didn't have my instincts about brand storytelling. I watched from a distance as Emma launched her company officially in October 2016. She called it Heritage House Consulting. The name was fine, if a bit generic. Her website was slick. Her pitch was polished. And she started landing clients. Small ones at first, boutique fashion brands, regional luxury retailers. But they were real clients paying real money. By December, she had 7 employees and an office in Manhattan. By March 2017, she'd landed her first major client, a heritage jewelry brand that wanted a rebrand for millennials. I read about it in Adweek. They did a whole profile on Emma, calling her the next big thing in luxury consulting. There was a photo of her in her office, looking confident and successful. The article mentioned that she'd bootstrapped the initial concept with help from industry colleagues, but was now building a world-class team. No mention of my name. I wasn't angry. I was focused, because while Emma was building Heritage House in New York, I was building something better in Toronto. I'd incorporated Patel Strategic Consulting in November 2016. At first, it was just a shell, a legal entity, a website, a business bank account. I kept my job at Pemberton and worked on my Canadian venture in the evenings and weekends. I reached out to my network there, offering free initial consultations to build case studies. I worked with small Canadian brands who couldn't afford big consulting firms. And I learned the Canadian market. The differences in consumer behavior, the regulatory environment, the competitive landscape. I learned what worked in Toronto versus Vancouver, how Quebec's francophone culture changed the game. By March 2017, I had 3 paying clients and a growing reputation. By June, I had 10. In August, I applied for permanent residency through the Startup Visa program. I had a business plan, letters of support from Canadian business leaders I'd cultivated, proof of funds, and a track record of successful consulting. In October 2017, my application was approved. That same month, I told Daniel I was moving to Toronto. You're what? He stared at me like I'd grown a second head. I'm moving to Canada. My consulting business is doing well there, better than it ever did here. Maya, you can't just... We're married. We have a life here. You're welcome to come with me. He shook his head slowly. My job is here. My family is here. Emma. She's my sister, Maya, and yes, she's here too. Choose, I said quietly. He looked at me for a long moment, and I saw the answer in his eyes before he spoke. I can't leave New York, he said. Then I guess we're done. The divorce was quick. We'd been married 8 years, had no kids, and I wanted nothing from him. I took my savings, my personal belongings, and my freedom. In December 2017, I moved to Toronto. The Canadian fashion industry welcomed me with open arms. I was an American, consultant with a track record willing to focus exclusively on Canadian brands. I understood their challenges, competing with American brands for attention, building identity in a market that spanned multiple time zones and cultures. And I had something Emma didn't. I actually cared about the brands I worked with. Emma's approach, I'd learned over our time working together, was transactional. She wanted prestigious clients, big names she could put on her website. She wanted to work with brands that would make her look good. I wanted to work with brands that had real stories to tell. My first major Canadian client was a heritage outerwear company called Norwood & Sons. They'd been making winter coats in Toronto since 1952, but they were struggling to compete with Canada Goose and other contemporary brands. I spent 3 months embedded with them. I interviewed the founding family, studied their archives, talked to their longtime customers. I found stories they didn't even know they had, about immigrant craftsmen who'd learned their trade in Europe, about coats that had survived Arctic expeditions, about a family's commitment to quality over profit. We repositioned them as Toronto's original luxury outerwear. We created a campaign around real customers and real stories. We raised their prices and improved their margins. Within a year, Norwood & Sons had a waiting list for their products. That case study changed everything. Suddenly, I had heritage brands from across Canada reaching out. A leather goods company in Montreal, a jewelry maker in Vancouver, a menswear brand in Calgary. By the end of 2018, I had 20 employees and offices in Toronto and Vancouver. By the end of 2019, I had 50 employees and had opened in Montreal, and the whole time I was watching Emma. Heritage House was successful too at first. Emma's New York presence gave her access to major American brands. She worked with established names, creating heritage campaigns for, companies that wanted to seem more authentic. But there were cracks. I followed her company religiously through industry publications, social media, and my network. I heard things. Clients who felt she didn't really understand their brand, employees who said she was difficult to work with, campaigns that looked pretty but didn't drive real business results. The problem was that Emma had learned the frameworks and methodologies, but she'd never understood the heart of the work. She didn't actually love brands or their stories. She loved the prestige of working with them. By 2020, Heritage House was stagnant. They hadn't grown beyond about 30 employees. They'd lost a few major clients to other consultancies. Emma was still doing well. She was still profitable, still respected, but she wasn't the next big thing anymore. Meanwhile, Patel Strategic Consulting was being profiled in Canadian Business Magazine as the consultancy redefining luxury in Canada. And that's when Emma found out. She called me in March 2020. It was the first time we'd spoken in over 3 years. Maya, it's Emma. Her voice was tight with fury. Emma, hi. Don't hi me. What the fuck do you think you're doing? I'm sorry, what? You're running a brand consultancy in Canada. The exact same business model as Heritage House. You stole my entire concept. I smiled, even though she couldn't see me. I'm not running it in the States, Emma. I'm in Canada. Different country, different market. You signed a non-compete. No, I said calmly, I didn't. You'll recall I specifically declined to sign your employment agreement because of that non-compete clause. I never worked for Heritage House. I was just a friend who helped you brainstorm in the early days. Silence. You planned this, she said finally. You fucking planned this the whole time. I built a business, I corrected. Just like you did. Except mine is doing better. I could sue you. For what? I'm not violating any agreement because I never signed one. I'm not operating in your market because I'm in a different country. And I'm not using your intellectual property because the methodologies I use are ones I developed myself. You developed them while we were working together. Was there paperwork establishing that? Employment contracts? IP agreements? No, then they're mine. I could hear her breathing heavily on the other end of the line. You know what you are, Maya? You're a backstabbing, opportunistic. Careful, I interrupted. I'm recording this call. Wouldn't want you to say something defamatory. I wasn't actually recording, but she didn't know that. She hung up. 2 days later, I got a cease and desist letter from her attorneys. It was toothless, full of bluster about misappropriation and unfair competition, but with no actual legal basis. My Canadian attorney laughed when she read it. She has no case, Jennifer told me. You're in Canada, you never signed her agreement, and business methodologies aren't copyrightable. Tell her lawyers to pound sand. We sent a polite response explaining that we had no legal obligation to cease anything, and we never heard from them again. But I knew Emma wouldn't let it go that easily. She tried to expand to Canada. I heard through my network that Heritage House was exploring opening a Toronto office. Emma flew up in May 2020, taking meetings, trying to poach my clients. It was almost sad watching her scramble, because she'd made a fundamental mistake. She'd built her reputation in the American market. She'd worked with American brands, networked in American circles, understood American consumer culture. Canada was different. Canadian brands didn't want an American consultant coming in to tell them how to be heritage. They wanted someone who understood Canadian identity, Canadian values, Canadian consumers. They wanted me. I'd spent 3 years building trust in this market. I'd worked with smaller brands, proved my value, earned respect. I'd hired Canadian staff who understood the local context. I'd learned French to work with Quebec clients. Emma showed up thinking her New York credentials would impress people. Instead, she seemed like exactly what she was, an outsider trying to grab market share. Her Toronto expansion failed within 8 months, and that's when things started to fall apart for her. The pandemic changed everything. When COVID hit in 2020, luxury retail collapsed. Brands canceled consulting contracts. Marketing budgets evaporated. Consultancies across the industry went under. Heritage House was hit hard. Emma had to lay off half her staff. She closed her Manhattan office and went fully remote. She took on smaller clients, less prestigious work. Meanwhile, Patel Strategic Consulting pivoted to digital brand strategy. We helped heritage brands move online, tell their stories through social media, connect with customers who were shopping from home. We didn't just survive the pandemic, we thrived. By 2021, we had 75 employees across 3 Canadian cities and had started working with American brands who specifically sought us out. Brands who'd heard we were the real deal, that we actually helped companies grow, not just make pretty campaigns. We had a client roster that rivaled the biggest consultancies in the world. We had waiting lists. We had brands offering us equity just to work with them. And Emma had nothing. I heard from Daniel, we still talked occasionally, awkward catch-up calls every few months, that she'd had to shut down Heritage House entirely in late 2021. She'd burned through her investor money, lost all her clients, and couldn't make payroll. She'd taken a job as a marketing director at a mid-sized retail company. A good job, respectable, but nothing like what she'd had. Nothing like what she'd stolen from me. In January 2022, I got a call from Lux Capital. Ms. Patel, my name is Richard Moss. I'm a partner at Lux. I wanted to reach out about a potential opportunity. I leaned back in my office chair, a corner office with a view of Lake Ontario, and smiled. I'm listening. We're looking to expand our portfolio in the brand consulting space, particularly in the Canadian market. Your firm came very highly recommended. By whom? Several of our portfolio companies who've worked with you. They say you're the best in the business. Better than Emma, he meant. Better than Heritage House. We're not looking for investment, I said. We're quite profitable on our own. We understand that. We're more interested in a partnership, access to your expertise, your client relationships. In exchange, we'd provide capital for international expansion and access to our network. International expansion to where? We were thinking the US market. Europe? Asia? I laughed. I couldn't help it. Something funny? Richard sounded confused. Just irony, I said. Your firm previously backed Heritage House Consulting, Emma Morrison's company. A pause. We're aware of that history. That investment didn't work out the way we'd hoped. Because Emma didn't know what she was doing. She had a good pitch, but no real substance. Frankly, yes. Which is why we're interested in you. We think you're the real talent. The real talent. After Emma had told them I was unstable, that I was just the ideas person. I'll think about your offer, I said. But I'm not particularly interested in the US market right now. Canada's been very good to me. We'd be happy to discuss whatever terms make sense for you. We set up a meeting for the following month. When I hung up, I sat in my office for a long time, just looking out at the lake. I'd won. Emma had tried to trap me, to steal my work, to ruin my career. She'd succeeded the first time, in a timeline that no longer existed. But this time, I'd beaten her at her own game. I'd built something bigger, better, more successful than she ever could. I'd done it without her investors, without compromising myself. And now those same investors were coming to me, admitting they'd backed the wrong person. I didn't take the Lux Capital deal. I didn't need them. Instead, in 2022, I took Patel Strategic Consulting public. We did a direct listing on the Toronto Stock Exchange, valuing the company at 800 million KIDs. I retained 65% ownership. I'd built this company without giving away equity to vulture investors, and I wasn't about to start now. The IPO made international news. Canadian consulting firm goes public in landmark deal. Patel Strategic redefines luxury brand consulting. Forbes did a profile on me. They called me the brand whisperer and talked about my unlikely journey from corporate consultant to founder of a publicly traded company. They mentioned that I'd briefly consulted for Heritage House in its early days before amicably parting ways to pursue my own vision. Emma would have seen that article. I wondered what she thought, reading about my success while she was probably in a corporate job she hated, answering to people who didn't understand her, living with the knowledge that she'd had a chance to build something real and had thrown it away because of greed and insecurity. I wondered if she remembered that non-compete agreement she'd tried to make me sign. The trap that would have worked if I hadn't known it was coming. But I didn't waste much time thinking about Emma anymore. I had a company to run. In 2023, we expanded to Europe. London, Paris, Milan, cities where heritage luxury brands had been operating for centuries and needed fresh perspectives. In 2024, we opened in New York. I didn't do it to spite Emma, though that was a nice bonus. I did it because we were genuinely ready. We had the resources, the reputation, the expertise. And importantly, enough time had passed that any hint of connection to Heritage House was long forgotten. We were our own entity, our own success. I was in our New York office on a gray October afternoon when I saw her. I was walking back from a meeting with a client in Soho, and there she was, coming out of a Starbucks. She looked older. We all did. It had been 8 years. But more than that, she looked tired, worn down. Our eyes met. I saw the moment she recognized me. Saw the flash of anger, then something else. Resignation, maybe? Or just exhaustion. I could have walked past her. I probably should have. Instead, I stopped. Emma. Maya. Her voice was flat. We stood there on the sidewalk, people flowing around us like we were rocks in a stream. I heard Heritage House closed, I said. I'm sorry. Are you? She laughed bitterly. You got exactly what you wanted. You destroyed my company. I didn't destroy anything. You did that yourself. By not letting you trap me in a non-compete agreement, by building my own business in a different country, by actually being good at what I do. She flinched. You stole my idea, she said, but there was no heat in it, just habit. It was never your idea, Emma. You asked me to help you build a consultancy. I said no, and then I built my own. That's called competition, not theft. You knew what I was planning. I knew you were planning to exploit me, to take my work and claim it as yours, to trap me with legal agreements that would have ruined my career. I stepped closer. Did you really think I didn't notice? The way you positioned yourself as the CEO and me as just a consultant? The way that non-compete was specifically designed to prevent me from ever working in my own industry again? She looked away. I was going to give you equity, she muttered. You were going to give me 15% equity with a 4-year vest and a 5-year non-compete. If you'd fired me after a year, I'd have walked away with nothing and been unable to work for 5 years. That's not partnership, Emma. That's servitude. I wouldn't have fired you. Yes, you would have, because that's who you are. You use people and discard them when you're done. She met my eyes again. There were tears in them now. You've always been better than me, she said quietly. At the strategy, at understanding brands, at all of it. I knew it then, and I know it now. I thought if I could just get you locked in, make you part of my company, I could, I don't know, control you, own your talent. You could have just been my friend, I said. You could have been happy that I wanted to help you. We could have built something together, genuinely together, as equals. I couldn't do that. Because I knew that if we were equals, everyone would see who was really the talent, and it wasn't me. I felt something unexpected. Pity. Emma had destroyed herself because she couldn't stand the idea of sharing credit. Because her ego mattered more than success, more than friendship, more than anything. I have to go, I said. I have a meeting. Maya? She caught my arm as I turned away. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I really am. I fucked up. I know that now. I looked at her hand on my arm, then back at her face. I forgive you, I said. And I meant it. Not because she deserved forgiveness, but because holding on to anger was exhausting. I'd won. There was nothing more to prove. I pulled my arm free gently and walked away. I never saw Emma Morrison again. 5 years later, in 2029, Patel Strategic Consulting is valued at $3.2 billion. We have offices in 12 cities across 4 continents. We employ over 400 people. We work with the most prestigious heritage brands in the world, fashion houses, luxury goods manufacturers, historic hotels, jewelry companies with centuries of history. We're known for one thing: telling true stories that matter. Not invented heritage, not fake nostalgia. Real stories about real craftsmanship, real values, real history. It's what I wanted to do from the beginning, before Emma tried to steal it. I'm 49 years old now. I never remarried. Between running the company and making up for lost time from my first life, I haven't had the interest. I have friends, a beautiful condo in Toronto with a view of the lake, and work that fulfills me. Sometimes I think about the other timeline. The one where I signed Emma's agreement. The one where I let her trap me. Where I spent 5 years unable to work. Where I ended up homeless and hopeless and standing on a bridge. That Maya didn't make it. But this Maya, the one who got a second chance, who learned from her mistakes, who refused to be a victim, she's thriving. I'm in my Toronto office when my assistant buzzes me. Ms. Patel, there's someone here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's important. Her name is Emma Morrison. I freeze. Then I smile. Send her in. Emma walks into my office slowly, looking around. At the floor-to-ceiling windows, the awards on the walls, the view of the city I've claimed as my own. She's dressed professionally, but not expensively. Working clothes, not power clothes. Wow, she says softly, you really did it. I did. I gesture to the chairs across from my desk. Please sit. She sits. She looks nervous. I know I have no right to be here, she starts. No, you don't, but you are here, so say what you came to say. She takes a breath. I've been working as a marketing director for the past few years. It's fine, it's stable, but it's not, I'm not doing what I love, what I know how to do, which is brand consulting, heritage work, working with companies that have stories to tell. She meets my eyes. I've learned a lot since Heritage House about myself, about what I did wrong, about how I treated people. About how you treated me, you mean? Yes, especially you. And you're here because I'm here to ask for a job. I laugh. I can't help it. The sheer audacity. You're serious. I'm very serious. I know I don't deserve it. I know I burned that bridge and salted the earth, but Maya, I'm good at this work. Not as good as you. I know that now, but I'm good. And I think I could actually contribute if you'd let me. I lean back in my chair, studying her. She's older, humbler. The arrogance is gone, replaced by something that might be wisdom or might just be defeat. Why would I hire you? I ask. After everything? Because you forgive people. You told me that, remember? On the street in New York. You said you forgave me. Forgiving you doesn't mean trusting you. I know, but maybe it could mean giving me a chance to earn that trust back. I think about it. Really think about it. The old Maya, the Maya from the first timeline, would have said yes immediately. Would have been too kind, too eager to help, too willing to see the best in people. That Maya ended up destroyed. But I'm not that Maya anymore. No, I say. Emma's face falls. Maya, let me finish. I'm not going to hire you, but I am going to do something else. I pull out a business card and write a name and number on the back. This is Caroline Wright. She runs a small consultancy in Vancouver, specializing in Canadian fashion brands. She's good, growing, and she's looking for senior consultants. I slide the card across the desk. I'll put in a good word for you. What you do with that opportunity is up to you. But Emma, if you screw her over the way you tried to screw me over, if you bring your old habits to her company, I'll make sure you never work in this industry again. Not in Canada, not in the States, nowhere. Are we clear? She takes the card with shaking hands. We're clear. Thank you, Maya. Really, thank you. Don't thank me. Just be better. She stands up, then hesitates. Can I ask you something? What? How did you know back in 2016 when I was setting up Heritage House? How did you know not to sign that agreement? It was like you could see the future. I smile. Let's just say I learned from experience. Sometimes the hard way. She nods slowly. I'm learning the hard way too. Good. It's the only way that sticks. After she leaves, I sit at my desk for a while, looking out at Toronto. I didn't give Emma a job at my company because I don't owe her that. I don't owe her anything, but I gave her a chance because that's who I choose to be. Not a victim, not vengeful, just someone who wins on her own terms and leaves the door open for others to do the same, if they earn it. I lived one life where I was too trusting and it destroyed me. I'm living this life with my eyes open, and I'm not done building yet. Another 5 years pass. I'm 54 years old. Patel Strategic Consulting is acquired by a major international consulting firm for $8.4 billion. I walk away with $5.5 billion personally. I could retire. God knows I've earned it. Instead, I start an investment fund focused on supporting women-owned businesses in the creative industries. I fund designers, consultants, artists, makers, people who have talent but not capital or connections. I look for people like I was, people who need a chance, and I make sure they never have to sign non-compete agreements that trap them. I make sure they keep ownership of their own ideas. I make sure they build equity in their own success. I name the fund Second Chances. It's a private joke, but it means everything to me because I got a second chance. Literally, impossibly, miraculously. I got to relive my life with the knowledge of what went wrong the first time. Not everyone gets that, but everyone deserves a chance to build something of their own, to not be exploited by people who claim to care about them. I hear through the grapevine that Emma is doing well at Caroline's firm in Vancouver. She's a senior consultant, respected, contributing real value. She's apparently learned to collaborate instead of dominate. Good for her. I hope she's learned what I learned, that success built on exploiting others is hollow, that real achievement comes from genuine talent and hard work, that sometimes the person you betray will come back stronger than you ever imagined. I'm sitting in my Toronto penthouse one evening, reading a book and drinking wine when my phone rings. It's a number I don't recognize. Hello? Ms. Patel, this is Detective Sarah Chen with Toronto Police Service. I'm calling about a cold case from 2025. We've been reviewing unsolved deaths and your name came up in our investigation. My blood runs cold. What investigation? In the original timeline, before certain events changed, there was a woman named Maya Patel who died in New York Harbor in October 2025. Suspected suicide, but the case was never closed. We're doing a review of similar cases, and I was hoping you could answer some questions. I'm frozen, can barely breathe. I'm sorry, I finally say, and you must have the wrong person. I've never been to New York Harbor. Our records show otherwise, but they're strange, conflicting, like two different timelines overlapping. I don't know what you're talking about. A long pause. Ms. Patel, off the record, did something happen to you in 2015? Something impossible? I could hang up. I should hang up. Instead, I say, what do you know about Rebirth, Detective? Another pause, then, more than I should. More than I can explain. Then you understand why I can't talk about this. I understand. But Ms. Patel, you should know, you're not the only one. We've found at least 7 other cases of people who seem to be living different versions of their lives, different outcomes, like someone gave them a second chance. 7 others. There are 7 other people like me walking around with memories of lives they no longer lived. Why are you telling me this? I ask. Because whatever happened to you, whatever gave you that second chance, you used it well. You built something good. Not everyone did. Some of them are making worse choices the second time around. What do you want from me? Nothing, just to know, to understand. And maybe to say that someone sees you, sees what you did with your second chance, and thinks you made the right choices. Thank you, Detective. Take care, Ms. Patel. She hangs up. I sit there in my penthouse looking out at the Toronto skyline, thinking about impossible things. 7 others. 7 other people who died or failed or lost everything, and then woke up in the past with a chance to do it differently. I wonder who they are. What they did with their second chances. Whether they're building something beautiful or destroying something precious. I wonder if I'll ever meet them. But mostly, I think about the woman I was in that other timeline. The Maya who signed the non-compete agreement, who let Emma trap her, who ended up with nothing. She stood on a bridge and made a choice. And somehow, impossibly, that choice gave me a second chance. I won't waste it. I pull out my laptop and start writing. An email to my fund managers about a new initiative I want to launch. A program for people who've been betrayed by business partners, who've been trapped by non-compete agreements, who need legal support and capital to rebuild. I'm going to call it the Fresh Start Initiative. Because that other Maya, the one who died, she deserves to be remembered. Not for how she died, but for what her death gave me, the knowledge that I could be better, that I could win, that I could choose forgiveness over bitterness, strategy over revenge, building over destroying. She didn't get her happy ending, but I did. And I'm going to make it count. I'm going to make sure that everyone who gets a second chance, whether it's supernatural or just the kind we give each other, has the tools and support to make it worth something. That's my legacy. Not the billions, not the company, not even the victory over Emma. My legacy is making sure that talent wins over exploitation, that good people get chances, that no one has to sign their life away to someone who claims to care about them. I close my laptop and walk to the window. Toronto glitters below me, all lights and possibility. Somewhere out there, Emma is working for Caroline, probably doing good work, maybe even happy. Somewhere out there, 7 other people are living their second chances, for better or worse. Somewhere out there in a timeline that no longer exists, there's a bridge and a woman and a choice that should have ended everything. But here in this timeline, there's just me, Maya Patel, 54 years old, billionaire, philanthropist, survivor, the woman who refused to be trapped, the woman who built an empire in Canada while her would-be exploiter crumbled in New York. The woman who won. I raise my wine glass to my reflection in the window. To second chances, I whisper, and I drink.